Hi, so I'm making today's video in response to a post that was made on the page about not feeling ready for recovery. So some people start to hear more about recovery, the things that our other videos are talking about, and to say, wow, that sounds great, and I kind of think I need that, but no way, I do not feel ready for that. And there's different ways of recovering. It can look different ways, not just like what we have on there, but either way. I wanted to make a response to some things that I think might be helpful for someone in that situation. The first is different things in the media that I think can be really great. First of all, joining our private group can be a really great place because you can see, first of all, people in recovery and see kind of what that looks like, and that people actually survive and they keep going even when they stop dieting and stop going to the gym or change how often they're going to the gym. The second thing is that if you can change your other social media, that there can be a lot of benefits from that. I know that when I started recovery myself, it's because I'd started to see some other things that were happening. So one is I would really recommend looking into certain people who talk about metabolic recovery. One of those people is Matt Stone. So he talks a lot about people who have been dieting for too long and are having weight issues because of it. Go Kaleo is another one. And these are people who have seen other folks who've been on diets for so long that they start gaining weight on lower and lower amount of calories. We know that the metabolism can change a lot to try to keep us healthy because we actually need body fat to be healthy. So if we kind of go to war with our body fat, our body's going to make changes with our thyroid and things going on in our brain and our hormones to try to keep our body fat adequate. So it's kind of neat to just read people who've written about that. I know Lee Peel's The Starvation Mode. That's another good read about it. So those aren't people necessarily talking about like eating disorder recovery. They're not saying bulimia and anorexia and things like that. They're just talking about kind of what are good lifelong practices for keeping your metabolism healthy. And so it's a pretty safe place to start. And then after that, I think there are other people who start to talk more about kind of self-esteem and body image issues. So that would be, one would be like the Fuck It diet. She talks a lot about that. Healthy is the new skinny, different things that you can subscribe to. I know I get their emails at the Fuck It diet. And, you know, we're trying to make more of those kinds of things from Work with Heart as well. They're definitely in the works. So I think what those can do is they can help you start to see that there is just another way to look at food. If we're saturated in the fitness magazines, that's kind of all that we see. And if we keep seeing people with low body fat being idealized, we keep thinking that that's an ideal thing. So it's really helpful to see people who have more body fat and start to think that that's a healthy thing. It doesn't mean we have to get the body fat yet. It just means it's starting to kind of enter our mind as something that might be a good idea. It can be helpful to look at eating disorder sites too, even things like Wikipedia, looking up anorexia, bulimia on Wikipedia. Your Etopia, so Your Etopia is another website where a lot of people found information. I did myself. And I can't vouch for everything on all of these sites, but more or less I think they start to fit together with a certain theme. And one of those themes is something I observed just from getting to know a lot of people in the fitness industry. So one of the things that kind of helped me recover was to see a lot of people who were dieting for years or kept low body fat for years started to have either some serious health problems or have thyroid issues. There's a lot of people going on thyroid medications, and even some professionals on their pages who said, I've had to bow out of competition this year because I'm just not leaning out like I used to, or I went to the doctor and my hormones are all really low. And I started to see, you know, this really doesn't seem to be working out for certain people. And then starting to hear stories of people gaining weight on less and less calories. And what that did is it kind of helped me see like what's sustainable and to just get those ideas going in my head. So one of the second things, after kind of working on social media and what you're filling your mind with that can be helpful, is to start to just keep track of the process, the eating disorder process. And so what that could mean, like for me, I noticed if there were days where I felt like I looked really great, I knew, absolutely knew it was only a matter of time, maybe even a couple hours, where my self-esteem would be in the tanks. It was always like this like give and take, this high and low. And I would just sort of start to like watch that and think like, oh, well, that's no good. I would start to kind of observe like my behavior at restaurants. Like if it was kind of rude that, you know, I'd ask 3 times, are you sure there was no oil on this? Because it looks like there was oil on this. And to think, oh, it's not really how I want to be interacting with people. And starting to track some health issues that you might be having. I went to all kinds of providers, and this is a big issue for us athletes or people who weigh more. And I went to providers actually asking, like, should I gain weight? Do I need more body fat? I honestly think there just isn't enough education about how important body fat is. There's so much out there about why people need to lose it, not too much about why people need to have it. And so I went to like a Chinese doctor, all kinds of like regular Western medicine specialists, getting tests done, my heart checked even, but nobody saw my low heart rate as a problem. Nobody saw my low body weight as a problem, but I had plenty of health issues, was trying all these herbs and getting rid of sucralose because she said it was hurting my liver, and that's why my liver enzymes were off and I was so tired. And it wasn't any of that, I don't think. I think it was just that I needed more food. So if you're starting to see these health problems, some of them might be unexplained, and some of them might be things that are really common with an eating disorder, like dry, flaky skin, or your hair getting really rough or falling out, or lots of split ends. Some people have told me about either lack of sex drive or painful sex from all those hormones and things being dried up. Dry skin and pain in your joints. I remember pain like deep in like my hip bones, and pain on the outside like when you're sleeping from not having padding. Different injuries that aren't healing, low energy, low heart rate, low blood pressure. Like I got turned away from giving blood because I think my pulse was too low, my temperature was too high. I actually think I was hypermetabolic at the time. But nobody said, oh, this is a sign you have an eating disorder. They said, oh, you must be sick. And I said, I'm not sick. This is how I am all the time. So if you start seeing these things, to just start to keep track of them. And I would say if you go to a doctor, because I've heard some people say I'm going to go to the doctor and have them do all the tests and see if there's actually damage, which would mean I've done an eating disorder. I did that, and they told me I was fine, and I wasn't until I saw an eating disorder specialist. Then they saw all the red flags. So people have to be trained to see, oh, for me, red blood cells that aren't normal, liver enzymes that aren't normal, injuries that aren't healing, fatigue, these other things that other people weren't putting together, the ED specialist was able to. And then the last thing that I would recommend is this exercise called the road. It's a really neat exercise for people who are in the contemplation stage, thinking about making a change. It's to kind of think about, okay, so if today was a split in the road, and I'm gonna think 5 years ahead if I do this whole recovery thing, and 5 years ahead if I keep going like I am, taking into account the psychological things, social things, physical health, in terms of investments of time and money. What's it gonna look like if I take this recovery route? What's it gonna look like if I wanna have kids from a fertility standpoint? Do I want to be talking about body image and food and things like that like I am now? What about my job or my relationships? What about my joints and my body? What am I doing to that? So think of all of that down one road, and then think of another road where, what if I did this recovery thing? What would it look like? You don't have to do it. It's just thinking about it. So I think all 3 of those things, looking at the media that you're incorporating on a daily basis, definitely YouTube videos. I forgot to mention that one. I was one of those that, subscribe to a lot of fitness channels, and even in my recovery, I have to be careful because I just get sucked into those, and I love learning about fitness. So just being mindful of them. I know like Matt Stone has some really great podcasts, for example. And then looking at kind of tracking what the eating disorder and the chatter, the things going through your mind are, what they look like. I would also say if you're interested in something like therapy, you don't necessarily have to say I have an eating disorder to go to therapy. Maybe just get started in therapy. It wouldn't hurt to find someone who knows something about it, so that if you want to deal with eating disorders later, they can help you with that. But just learning coping skills, paying attention to your emotions, that could be really helpful too, and that doesn't require you to jump on the recovery train. I wanted to share one of my own kind of stories. Was that before I started my recovery, I remember this growing sense that, you know, I'd eat and I was still hungry because I'd eaten all my macros for the day, even though it was a pretty high number. I was on a pretty high number. And I would think one of these days, I'm just going to eat so much food. I'm going to stop counting. I'm going to stop weighing. And I'm so hungry. And I just knew it. It was just this voice deep down. And I kept counting my macros. I didn't listen to the voice, but I knew it was getting stronger. And one day it got very strong. So wanted to share. I hope it's helpful. If anyone has some feedback, we'd love to hear it. If you want to get invited to our private page, we would love to have you, both to offer our support and to see if you'd like to support others. Bye.